Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
For me, the lesson in looking at the work that he's doing is like, I think sometimes, and this is kind of this contradiction that I have, is like I currently have like the privilege to work with like high-end marketing people, right? So when I was in a meeting yesterday, like listening in to see it's a bunch of chief digital officers getting together from some of the big companies, right? And they were talking about their challenges and what they're doing and whatever. And some of the topics that come up, of course, also touches on marketing. And then I have similar groups where they're looking at, because I mean, Google is it Google and Apple? They're cutting the whole cookie thing out, right? So everybody's freaking out. Like, how are we going to do advertising now? Like, how are we going to be able to track people? Because what's it, IDFA? There's like a unique number on your phone that they can actually track you. Because also you're just going back to the old school kind of spray and pray advertising, right? And there's a point to my story. Now they're trying to figure out how that is. And we're talking at real scale and big money, right? But now what I'm thinking, sitting in these meetings, I'm thinking, and maybe I'm making a misconnection here, but then I think about our friend, Mr. Branson, right? And in his marketing book, he talks about, his traffic book, he talks about how as an entrepreneur, he got slapped by Google all the time. You know, every time they roll out an update, he gets his ass kicked because, you know, the cost per ad goes up and his revenue or margin goes down. And he had to look at alternatives. And perhaps what's going to happen while we're looking at these alternative kind of people who are gaming the system and working it like that the big brands will have to start looking at that kind of approach as well.
Of course,
you know,
that's the fun part.
Yeah,
that's a bit where my maybe my stupidity or brilliance, I'm not sure where it is yet, comes in, because I have been on both sides. I know how a big corporation works and how they think, and how like the hierarchy game and the political game and the structure and the slowness, but on the other side as well, the power you have with a huge brand and with the money you have. Yeah. But I know the other side as well, so it's quite super fun in the moment where you're linked still in both worlds, because you can think like both sides. Yeah, it's fun.
Man, the weird thing is, right, and this is what's gonna be, because when you look at ClickFunnels and you get that kind of model down, and I like the way that it's kind of unpacked more simply, right? That you can draw it out. But the thing is, you still have to add your own creativity to it, right? You have to plug in your value that you want to create, and you have to find your audience that you want to resonate with, the people that you want to talk to, because that's super important. I mean, that's one thing I'm struggling with at the moment. And then you have to be interesting. Yeah. And I think that is something that's going to be a challenge for potentially big corporations, because I think there's like a heavy debate. I've seen this happen. And there's actually studies that still prove. So to give you context, I come from an advertising agency. I worked in TBWA for spans of times, right? For time. And I was still there when Lee Clow, he was close to Steve Jobs, was the creative director of Shire Day, TBWA. So he was kind of our boss, you know. Sometimes, like every Christmas, we get a message from him where he sits next to a fire and talks to us about creativity. And he kind of let us believe in this idea of like, there's the big idea and you have to be creative and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's kind of been watered down over the years, where people say it's not really about creativity, it's about data. Yeah. Right? It's data. It's like, you know, how can you use artificial intelligence, all these things, blah, 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 to make things. But you still have to be creative, even using those tools. And I think
that's what a lot of people don't get. And it doesn't matter which tool you use. Like if you use ClickFunnels, any other more funnel structure, or a normal website, it's still a tool. It's still just doing what you ask it to do in a lot of things. It's of course helping you and automating it, but if you don't know how you build your personal brand, if you don't know how to build the following, if you don't know how to run a business, it's not helping you. It's just confusing you, and that's why as well you as a person need to be all in. If you're not all in, it's like there will not be an outcome.
Yeah, you can't go like half. You have to commit yourself, right?
Yeah.
And this is a stupid analogy, but it's because I'm being. I can hear them in the background. You might not, but the kids going crazy over here because they're decorating or messing around with the Christmas tree. They might blow up my house because there's something wrong with the lights, as always. These Christmas lights, right? But I think because as a creative. Because I'm influenced like that, I always like to talk about the actual decorations on the tree. And people will probably kill me if I say creativity is the decorations on the tree, right? It's not about the lipstick. But the problem is when you start talking about the decorations, like all the senior people get like frustrated. They want to see the tree, right? And the problem is when I talk about it, it sounds like there isn't a tree. But like the ClickFunnels structure, all that is the tree.
It is.
You just need to come in and add the decorations and make it your tree. Did it work?
Yeah, and you need to add a little bit water or whatever that the tree that the needles are not falling off the tree straight away.
Exactly. Yeah, or plug in the you have to plug in the electricity to make the lights go on, right?
Yeah, and then comes the automation engine like I have. Then you put a clock which is. Or a light sensor that works like, oh, now it's going on. And when it's evening, it goes off.
Yeah, I probably, I suspect you also have one of those trees where it reacts to the music in the room, right?
No, we don't.
Yeah, so it's interesting, So, I mean, I think the thing that makes people feel a bit uncomfortable about this whole creative space and creativity is that it's fundamentally hard to measure. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are spending a lot of time to look into creative effectiveness and how do you measure it? Because what's that thing that the important people say? You probably say to your people at in your ex gigs as well, as you can't measure you can't. If you can't measure it, you can't control it. Or so, I don't know. Like this famous saying, right? Because it's that uncomfortableness. But I don't know. Like you're doing this challenge now, right? Or you've done it, or it's still ongoing. I don't know if you've noticed.
I haven't even really started yet. I am just announcing it and then get rolling.
So the other thing I wanted to ask if you noticed it, but a lot of people when they look at these frameworks, they go. And this is a question that comes up all the time. It's like, but can I use it for my nail salon? Can I use it for consulting? Will it work? And like, the answer is inevitably yes. But the problem is you need to make the connection.
Yes.
You need to bring the knowledge of your industry and then figure out how it's going to work for you. And I think that's a challenge that a lot of people, that's probably going to put a lot of people off. I think there's still this kind of vibe, and this is probably good for entrepreneurs, is that there is still a lot of people who are not so excited about doing the work. And it's not always, you've taught me, the work is not always about just touching your keyboard. The work is here.
Yeah.
Like how can I scale it? How can I change the strategy to work for my business?
And that's often the hardest thing to switch to that. It's like, where it's like, because you like some work you like really, as well the nitty gritty details. But if you then, it's like, if you take this approach where you take yourself on an hourly rate, what you are worth it yourself, and then you apply this to everything below that, I will outsource. Yeah. Might be crazy from a way of thinking, but then it's like you do it and you outsource, and then that will accelerate your business. That's the fun part of that. It's just a mental game where you say, okay, I'm too expensive to do that myself. If you just think like this, so it should be done by someone else.
Yeah.
So who is the other who can do that in a lower price range, and maybe most of the times, for me at least, to a better quality.
That's the thing.
That's to the point. That's why I'm not cutting my my YouTube channel myself because I suck in it. I'm even sucking in the video, but that's a different part. It's more, the cutting is even worse. I don't have the proper equipment. I don't have, like, I even don't have the patience to really dive into that and geek out about that, because I'm an entrepreneur geek. So I geek about that kind of stuff. And it's like marketing and how do you build business and how do you help others to do that, but not how I cut a video. That's not my world. And
that's been a solid challenge for me, right? Because in a way, I mean, you can see with this thing hanging next to me here, right? I do geek out a little bit about, I like hardware, but then also, for example, there's an element in my practice and what I'm doing, and that's probably also why I haven't really grown so much during this year, because I've taken a lot of this year to do that, is that I do geek out a little bit about the actual implementation. So, for example, with editing a podcast or wherever, I'm kind of reaching this point now where I'm going like, man, I don't want to be doing this anymore. So there's two ways you do it, right? There's like you get someone to actually like edit it for you, or you damn sure make sure that you don't screw up during the whole episode. So you kind of live with the imperfections, right? And you automate it from there, right? So I'm kind of like looking into that. But there is an element in me, like, and I'll tell you a little anecdote, you're going to laugh, that, I try and master something to an extent that I know how it works before I actually outsource it, right? Because sometimes when you don't have knowledge of something and you outsource it, it comes back and you're unhappy and you don't know why. Or you might be unhappy and you're not being fair towards the person who you've outsourced to, because maybe you briefed badly or what you actually asked for wasn't really possible and there was a misalignment. And I'll give you an example. So a mutual friend of ours, I don't know if I should mention them. They do events.
Then I don't know who that is.
So, they won't mind, because we recently did an event together, and they kind of brought me on board to help them produce the event. And I worked on the first 2 days. And the thing is also, of course, there was like really cool strategy work, and we worked on the structure of the event, and we did all kinds of things together. But ultimately also what I wanted to experiment with, because for the last couple of months, I solidly dropped into, and I don't know how I did that, into the whole virtual event space. Specifically people who have had like hybrid or like physical events, and now they have to go online. They're freaking out, right? So the one thing is technology, but then also like how do you like bring that thing into the virtual space? You just don't plug it into like Second Life or whatever, which people think it's going to be awesome. I have this little 3D man walking around, and it kind of sucks. But anyway,
let's see.
So I worked with our mutual friends to, set this up, and we kind of took Zoom webinars, and we bent it like in a way that we wanted to work for us. So that was really cool, because to give you an idea, the idea was to really bring people into a space, put them on stage, and then have them have conversations with each other. So at some stage we wanted like just 2 people on screen having a conversation, and then having the audience giving them the ability to actually talk, but then bring back people back into kind of this kind of crazy Zoom thing that we all hate by now, but all the screens so they can interact, right? And we forced Zoom webinar platform to do this for us, and it worked great. And then we worked in some production stuff that Werner was way too happy to do himself, like videos, all kinds of things. And it ran, like the first day it ran like a champ, like it was great. We had sound effects, applause, all kinds of things. It was great. And then on the second day, because we kind of really ran fast, and you know how this rapid prototyping thing works, you've been there. No, and the second day, 45 minutes before the actual event, I had to render out a whole bunch of stuff. And I have a brand new MacBook Pro. I'm looking at it right here because it's fixed now. So you see where I'm going with this? Is I completely blew the motherboard on that MacBook.
Oh.
45 minutes before the event.
Shit.
I've never felt so devastated. Not about my MacBook. I mean, that's a physical thing that you can fix. But now you're working with friends / a client, and now I can't go online. I can't physically run this event. I mean, of course, we had like pseudo contingencies because they could take over. We got the videos out. The event went on. I don't think the audience really noticed anything, but I completely burned out. And I sat there, and for a moment, I also thought of you. I did. I don't know if you felt the pain because I saw you a little bit because I'm going. And this is exactly what Jens talks about. Is that production part? I should have outsourced it. There's people who do this, have contingencies in place, and can run it better than I could. But then I would also argue, and I think you would agree, is that the fact that I've done this and I blew up my Mac was an immense learning curve, right? Not only from a business perspective, but now I know what can go wrong, right?
To have a second MacBook Pro, the new one.
I need to talk to my wife after this because I actually had the conversation already. Can I get another computer?
No, I shouldn't ask it right now. It's not a good one.
I can see that new microphone. Don't talk now. Don't ask.
No, it's too early. Even Christmas will be too early.
Yeah, wait for the new M1s. I hear they rock and roll for live streaming. But yeah, I mean, that was a great learning for me. It's like, but I wanted to caveat by sometimes you have to kind of have to go through the pain once or twice to actually see what it entails to do what you're requiring to outsource.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing I always tell people about, which nobody believes me. You need to do the mistakes to be able to improve, to be able to do things differently. What I see a lot, especially when you come from a large corporation like I did, you don't want to do mistakes because you are trained not to do mistakes. Not like you're trained to deliver things which are perfect, which are almost never perfect, but that's the way of thinking. And then you just don't. So that means it holds you back, and you always wait for the last 20%. I'm more the opposite. I'm starting with 20% and off you go.
Yeah, set the bar low, right? Yeah. Because when you go over the 20%, everybody's happy anyway. It's a lesson I got from an old friend of mine, a senior person at Deloitte. It's like, do your thing. Like, she also wanted to kind of experiment, push the limits. And she says, do your thing. I mean, you're going to screw up, but just make sure during the whole year, there's one thing you do really well. It's going to allow the partner or the senior person in your business to go, Werner did really well here. And it's not about Werner doing really well. It's about you making him look good. So then you can play. Yeah. Then you can play. Do your thing. Right? But I do agree with you. I think the pressure we have to in big corporations, I felt it too. There isn't really like the room to fail, right? Because you have the pressure. But I think also, as a conversation came up earlier this week with my wife, is that in corporations, we also do have like ways to deal with those kind of things, because I call it the phase 2 syndrome, right? I don't know if you've had that happen to you, where you go through this process, right? You have to deliver, there's a deadline, and then someone comes in like, it would be really great if we added this thing, and it's not going to work, or you can't do it, or whatever. And so like, we're going to do that in phase 2. And then everybody knows that phase 2 will never happen. So that's how you deal with the failure, right?
But that's a good point. So how do you think, and going back in your life a little bit, is what is the hardest thing, or what was the hardest thing for you going from a corporation to do your own business?
I mean, I think jumping into my own business, I had certain things that kind of was like a curtain in front of my eyes. So I didn't really realize what I would miss going into my own business. So I made a few assumptions that was proven wrong, but was cool, right? Remember, I kind of got to a crossroad, and I don't know if there's a sense into, like, I want to try and get to what you're asked, but I think my context is a bit different, because I came to a crossroad in my corporate career where, I felt I learned a lot and whatever, And like a mutual friend of ours, Aga, kind of influenced me at that stage to go through the Seth Godin Alt MBA, and that kind of also challenged, because the whole vibe there, and this is what influenced my decision, is that there's not really, you can change a lot of things, you can work really hard and become this linchpin in your organization, and that's true, right? And I felt the people that I worked for, I wanted to be that. I wanted to be that linchpin that they rely on. And I still have people who talk to me, so I think I might have done an okay job. They don't hate me. But I realized that there's few things that I wasn't really keen on in an organization, and I realized like the only person or only thing I can really change is me. I can change. Yeah. So, either I do certain things to fit in or I have to change. And that change led me to become, the owner of my own business. And the thing is, the reason I did this, and this might sound stupid, is that I only did it because it scared the hell out of me. Right?
That's a good reason.
Yeah. So,
and let's go there. Yeah, and that's a bit the point where I see a lot of, from a mindset, entrepreneurs in large organizations, and they're just like you said, they're scared like hell. They're not doing that first step. That's why I want to do these podcasts as well, because it's like people like us who did that step and who are kind of quite well established and successful in a way.
Yeah.
Or even super successful like you are. So I think it's one thing. It's like you need to start to be able to grow and to build an imperium or build a following and build, let's say, a vision which is interesting and a perspective where you want to change something in this society, in this world. And the other part is really like, get started. That's the only way how to do it. It's jump over the fence and go, and then bootstrap. Try to figure out how that works. That's what I did as well. It's not easy.
It's not easy. The thing is, like, the scary thing, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? I mean, and one size doesn't fit all, right? So, for example, and I don't want to, like, you made such an excellent point, and I don't want to lose all these things floating around. But I think, if I look back and I have to give people advice, because people have asked me like how do you make this transition or whatever, and I did a cold jump into cold water, but that is what was going to work for me, because if I didn't do the jump and the leap, I would have never done it. I would have stuck around. I would have been happy. I would have done my thing, and there would be other challenges. I'm not saying it's horrible in a corporation, but you find your challenges. I had to do the cold jump. But like one thing I would say to some folks, and that is sometimes harder to do, is that you, and reflecting on my journey up to this point, because I always say I know things because I've screwed up so many times, not because I'm so clever, is that one thing that I would have probably considered doing differently is to actually start planning my business while I was still employed.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying using the resources of your employer or whatever, but starting up, bootstrapping. Because the thing is, whilst you're still employed and you're able to pay the rent, because I'm not that fancy that I can't pay a rent anymore. My wife will kick me out the house. So then you start planning things. And I didn't really plan. And that was a big mistake I made. But also for me, it kind of worked because it throws you into the mix. And then I did the I don't know if you did it in your corporate, because you've also kind of touched on the consulting world. But the first thing I did when I walked out the door is I opened up my old Deloitte spreadsheet, changed the name at the top to experience.consulting, and the pipeline document. Those lovely documents, and you have your pipeline. You go, okay, let's add some numbers. And then that column is empty, that column is empty, that column is empty. Then reality kicks in, right? So then you have to start figuring out what's going on.
No, I didn't do that. But I'm more the opposite. I'm an over planner. Oh, I was. It changed dramatically. But so I was doing exactly like you said. I was starting my business when I was still in a large corporation, and it slowly ventured into that. But what I then, and now retrospective, what I have seen when I switched, being 100% on my own, it's basically you channel the whole universe is shifting, and you channeling it to, like, you channel your energy to your business, to what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then your business, at least my business, is like grows exponentially, just because you focus 100% on it. And then of course you need to iterate and speed up. But for me, and it has morphed going forward. That was the point for me, which I also now recommend to a lot of people who have a business and they do that on the side. It will never be big if you're not focusing on it, or it's like a unicorn which is growing on itself, which rarely happens.
Yeah, because I mean, corporations, and especially I think it depends on your job, right? And I think your former employer, and they do ask a lot of your time, and kind of fooling yourself that you're going to be working on this little embryo. It's because I don't know how you are. I really struggle to split my attention sometimes, because if I'm working on something like trying to blow up my MacBook, I really focus on doing that. That's why I do it so well. It's like, and then to split focus and then do someone else justice, because I'm also like, I mean, we can talk about your former employer or whatever. I respect them, and I always think about the first day I walked in there and I signed a contract. I made a commitment to them that I'm going to give them X amount of my time, this. So it was very hard for me to kind of shift that and say, okay, cool, focus here now. But I mean, I actually have a question for you, and this is something that I've been struggling with, is that what I found interesting in a previous conversation we had is that when I think about my business, I think about this business, right? This thing that I'm trying to do, my consultancy. But when I listen to you, you have multiple businesses going on, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you like, did you start with one of them, or like how do you split your attention between them? Do you see them as fundamentally different entities and treat them like that, or is there umbrella? Like how do you have, like I wouldn't know how to handle 4 or 3 or 2 different five.
No, it's easier than you think if you build this. So first of all, I'm a systems thinker. So I look at it from like 10,000 foot level, or how many meters that ever are. And that's how I orchestrate it. So you need to see me as an orchestrator of the business, even if I'm knee down crawling in some of the business. But that's how I see myself, and that's how I built it up from the beginning. Because what I have learned being in a large corporate, that it's about the vision and the thing you want to change long term. So that's like my fixed point, and that's what I'm after. And all the businesses are basically just opportunities I have seen to do impact in a specific field, or to earn money in which generates automatic income for me, which is financing the other pieces of the business. So that's the rough understanding of it. And then it's like finding partners and finding people who are interested and willing to spend their time, and you pay most of them, for you and for your course, and getting to the bigger goal you have. So if you kind of orchestrate that, it's kind of working. And if you do that where you work a lot with other people, and you're not the bottleneck, it's accelerating to numbers and ways you wouldn't even imagine. That's the fun part. Like with the clothing brand I have, it's accelerating from itself.
Excellent. And the thing is, like, just to test something with you, right? Because you're making me think now, because I'm having an aha moment, and I might be wrong, but what is your overarching goal? What is Jens, like, what is your goal? Like, do you have a vision for yourself? And I'm talking from a business perspective. Yeah. It might even like bleed into your personal life, but what is your overarching goal?
So they're different one. I have a goal for each business, singularity, and then I have singularity, and then I have a goal towards something bigger. That's where I mainly attach myself, and all businesses are going into that direction, but with a different flavor. So it's really how do we change the world from a big scale perspective? Because what I've seen over the last years is that whatever happens in the world, climate change and so on, it's like there are bad things happening, and what holds people back and what holds organizations back is the perspective of where they are in. So it's like you're a successful business owner, you're like Fortune 50 business, which means you're fairly big.
Yeah.
And you're not supporting climate change today, that's a no-go.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, is if you switch this around and you are supporting climate change, you turn your business around, and climate change is one of the biggest focuses you do. That's a message you send out into the world where you impact a lot of people. So what I'm after is, how do you impact the world with businesses? Because for me, business is a language. It's a language like English, German, Polish, South African. Where it's a uniting language. So for me, it's like, how do you build businesses? How do you create this as a language, which then in itself empowers people to change the world? That's the bigger picture.
Man.
I know it's fairly abstract, but that's the way I'm working. That's the way I'm pushing things. It's always, how can we create businesses that will change the world? And that's one of the examples is why I started this reverse mentorship business. Like, how do you connect leaders of today, which is like the seniors, with leaders of tomorrow's, which are the juniors, and then reverse that, where you say, now the young guns are teaching the old ones, instead of the other way around. So it's how do you create an exchange between these two perspectives, which then in itself, just the exchange already will impact the businesses of today and will impact the business of the future. So there's only a win-win perspective. And then if I'm being part of that, if I'm helping that to grow and having a stake in it, it's good for me too.
Yeah, you're the fuel, you're the connector, right? And I think, like, I don't want to completely simplify what you're saying, but when I said earlier about I'm having this aha moment, and it's probably like super obvious. I think something that, and it's not like I'm going like I'm completely a fool, but I've noticed it, because you have to analyze your business as you go along, right? And I think what has happened, but the thing is, things are a bit tough now with the pandemic. I think we're all kind of all over the place, and sometimes there's knee-jerk reactions and these kind of things. But I think something that I'm starting to see really come to fruition for me, and I actually want to see if I have this book here somewhere. I can't remember if did I put it here? It's like one of the books that I thought, no, this is not going to be like, I didn't trust this book, because I was given this book, the E-Myth, by a Deloitte partner that I respect a lot, and I read this, and I wish that he gave me this book before I started at Deloitte, because it really talks a little bit about what you were saying, is like identifying the systems in your business, and then seeing how you can automate those systems, and not automate in like this evil way, like how you can get other people to come in and work. Because I always kind of brought myself closer to the people. The people are super important in your
most
business,
important
right?
part of life.
It's the most important part. But the thing is, you also have to balance the people with, you can't just be, so for a stupid example, if I have 5 Salesforce developers in my team and one gets sick, I need to be able to put another one into that space to do the work. Or, you have to build your business in such a way that it doesn't just rely on it could rely on human beings, but on a single human being, because it can become a problem. Also, what I see a lot happening in organizations, and maybe even if you have your small business, is that when you bring something new in, and this is a classic for me, it's like when you bring someone new into the business, and I've seen it now even as a consultant going into other businesses, man, are you lost. I have no clue, and then people get upset because you've emailed the wrong person about this, that, because they haven't put systems in place. There is no clear system, and it's not documented, and people kind of go like, this Deloitte guy is going to give us another slide deck about systems. No. The thing is, when you bring someone new in,
just trying to sell something.
Yeah. So, where's my card? But the thing is, you have to systematize this thing, and then go on and then make sure the business can run, right?
Yeah.
And when someone new comes in, but the aha moment that we spoke about, or what I spoke about 10 hours ago, that I wanted to share with you is, I think, is that the challenge I've had during the course of my business is that, like, what am I? You know, people don't know, you know, how, like, what is it? Is this guy an experienced guy? Is he a digital transformation? And I think when I listen to you, like, I want to kind of title you and say, like, your title actually, it might be different in different times, but it's entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. And as soon as you call yourself an entrepreneur, you lift yourself out of the, I am a experienced designer, I'm a service designer. Because when you lift yourself out of that, you can do anything. You applying the same rules and approach. I mean, I should be able to go out and sell soup out there if I have the systems in place, and I am a real entrepreneur. I should be able to do that. And I think that's kind of and I think this is the thing when you step into your own, into your own, is that there's a very fine line between being an entrepreneur and being a freelancer. And I flip-flop between them, and that's kind of the thing that I need to work on going into 2021. It's like, I need to let go of the freelance part of my business so that I can be focusing more on the entrepreneurial part of my business.
Yeah, and the interesting point on that is, if you think as entrepreneur, you think like a business. Like we talked about the microphone, which is new. If you if you just think me as a person, that's tremendous amount of money as a private person to invest into a microphone, which is just the kind of doing my hobby, which is a podcast, which is not a hobby. It's part of my business. But if you think like as a business, that's an investment into the future. That's an investment which will be paid off. In my case, most probably in the next 4 weeks, if not earlier. So,
man, you're laying down challenges here. I need to up my game.
No, but it's honestly that's more when and that's a bit the difference between freelancing and being an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you think through business. It's not how can I sell myself for a little bit or for a lot to work for someone else. As an entrepreneur, your main goal is you work towards your focus. You work towards your North Star. I don't like that word, but everyone will get it.
Yeah.
So you work towards your vision, and you spend the time for your business. You spend the time and your energy and everything to move your business. Of course, you have clients, you have customers, which you officially work for, but that's all accelerating your business. And if it's a freelancer, it's just you're lending out your time to someone else and do something for them. Which is fair enough. It's also okay. It's just entrepreneurial way of thinking is different. It's like bigger from a perspective, and that's why I say spending €300 on a microphone.
Yeah, because that's where we're different. I have to work really long to be able to do this, right?
And that's why you have the more expensive version.
So you have to work. And you have to look at your gear around you, like that. Kind of your employees too. They have to work to earn money, right? Yeah. And how you look at that. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and as you were talking, right, and because you're putting down like the visions and things, and for me now coming to the end of the year, and I know people run their years differently and whatever, but I usually sit back in January and I try and look at my business, go back, because sometimes you're kind of in the machine room, you're running around. And then you have time to reflect back, and then you do planning. Like, are you gonna how do you usually attack planning? I know you're kind of still early in some of the businesses you're running, but like, what is your kind of mantra around trying to do like a year-end review, or do you do that, or do you do it on a monthly? Like, how do you do that, or don't do it at all?
No, I don't do it at all, because for me it's more documenting the learnings on the way, which helps you to do the next step, and that's so for me. It's of movement is more important than to reflect a year ago. The situation for me, for example, a year ago, I was having one business, which was completely different perspective. So now I having 5 business in January 6. It's a different way of thinking, and I'm only being able to do that because I'm not doing it alone, and because it's always 3 months perspective. So I'm only looking, even on a private life, towards the 3 months perspective, which helps me to focus really on the most important things right now. And then I'm reflecting backwards as well. What did I learn? What did I learn? What did I improve? What works? What didn't work? And then coming back to the numbers, what you said is, how do I use the right numbers to get my focus in? So, for example, which I will not say which one it is, I have one KPI, which is an overarching KPI for all my businesses.
Great. Okay.
Number one. So everything else is second order. And I will do everything in all business towards that KPI. And that's for, especially when you come from a large corporation, that's what you should do. But it's when you run a business as an entrepreneur, especially when it's not big, you don't really have that. At least I didn't have in the beginning. So I learned that, and I learned myself as well to focus. That's why I'm not doing year review. My financial guys are doing that and say it's like, you have screwed up or whatever.
Yeah. Like they're coming for you, Jens. They're coming.
Yeah, might be. But but that's also, maybe that's a good point. I'm not doing my business to get rich. So I don't care about money. And I'm in a state and place of my life where I can say that, and where I can be true to that. It might be different when it's like I'm on the edge. I was like, oh, there's no money coming in. I need to focus. I need to change things around. But that's a safe place to be in, because then you only do what you want to do. You only work with the people you want to work with, which then again accelerates your business.
Exactly.
That's because you have fun with it. You just do the stuff you like.
There's no desperation.
Exactly.
Like what's going to put? Yeah.
Long answer to your question.
No, that's. I like it. The only thing that I was thinking about, right? Because like, and I need to carefully ask this question to you as well, because like, some of this might go public, and we don't want to like make commitments in digital, and then it gets like lifted into our face later on. But I mean, I've also looked at, because I'm kind of like really open. In one way, I'm trying to focus on where this is going, because I don't want to sound like this design thinking guy, but like prototyping, testing, see where things are going, see where things stick. Because like, for example, the one challenge I have is like, how do I connect with the right audience? I think like really serving the people who want to hear from you, that's super important. And I tend to sometimes go and I've learned that even before I left my corporations, I try and serve people who don't care or doesn't value what you bring. And it's not that they're bad people. They have other gurus and mentors, but you need to find that audience. And I'm trying to kind of shuffle my way towards where I'm finding my audience. And I feel like I'm really close to that. But that being said, I'm also open to see what other opportunities come my way. And those opportunities might include being employed again, like working again for a bigger organization potentially. Not that I have anything now or like I'm planning anything, but I don't have a resistance against that. But and I kind of feel like if I ever was employed again or had to go into a position again, I feel like this 2.5 years that I've worked now on my own has taught me way much more than I've learned before, right? I feel like I've grown. But like, how do you feel at the moment? Do you think that, like, looking around you, are you open to step into an organization again when the right thing comes around? Are you really like do you feel like you kind of close that door for yourself now, or do you think that you can take things into the organization as an entrepreneur? I don't even know if this question makes any sense.
No, but I have decided for myself that I have so much fun with what I'm doing and with the people I'm working that I can't consider that at all. It's like there's you can't pay me any amount of money to get me deciding to work for someone else. No chance.
Man, that's rock and roll. Yeah, I
At
like
least
that.
I can't see that the next 5 years. Maybe in 4 months I'm completely bankrupt. That might happen.
But I mean, you never
then
know.
it's a
Like, this is
different
not a
discussion.
commitment, right? We because
Yeah.
things change so fast at the moment. But I just wanted to test the water. How you feeling right now?
No, I don't see myself to work for a large corporation anymore because I have so much fun in it. And that's also why I have decided not working for large corporations, which is a decision I have taken for myself. Because I have been there and I have now worked with larger corporations as well, which is hard. And it's hard because there's so much bureaucratic, especially in the field I work with, which is like acceleration and innovation topics. And it's like, how do you move things? And that doesn't really work. And I have seen it myself. It takes a long time. And it's more for me, it's like, this time is pain. And it's painful for me. So I rather zoom in and say, I'm there. I help entrepreneurs who are like in the same situation I was 2 years ago. You have been 3, 4, 5 years ago, like going out of a corporation and jumping into this cold water. Don't know how to do that. So what I have committed myself is for 2021 is helping entrepreneurs to accelerate their business, but having the bigger topic, which is like help 1 million people to innovate, which is connected to that as well, where I say, how do you help entrepreneurs to innovate their business? How do you bring them to a path that they're sustainable and really being able to fulfill their dreams and fulfill their vision, because then they're enabling more people going forward as well.
Man, and it sounds lofty, but it's such an important topic because, like, I just listening to you now, I started reflecting on, because entrepreneurship for me is a challenge, but this is why I'm doing it. Because I don't think I'm super great at it. This is
Same
something
here.
that I want to master it, right? I want to grab it. But I think what is important, and it'll be interesting to hear what you say about this, is that I have a little 4-year-old on the other side of this door. And when I think about him, I grew up in a country with a very weird, bad political system. I still remember that, my dad I love him to bits, but he was kind of in that space where you work for a corporation for life, right? You work for them and then you retire. I mean, he had a great career and whatever, but he never really flip-flop between different things, where I was all over the place, trying different companies or whatever. But I think one thing that my dad and potentially myself, we lack, and we're trying to grow that now, is entrepreneurship, right? I would say it's a quiet skill and mindset. How would you go, how do you see the future generation, and what can I do to get this little tyke on the other side of the door to start being more entrepreneurial rather than trying to influence him to be the next doctor? Like, he's going to be a doctor someday, or, he's going to be an engineer. I'm going like, I'd rather having him be a entrepreneurial spirit and then let him go and do whatever he needs to do. Like, what can we do to get them to that level, right? To think more like that with parents who kind of struggle with it themselves.
Now, I think number one is being the good example yourself. So be what others be the thing what others could be like. Be the good example where others would like to follow. That's I think number one. But it's also, I mean, this goes way deeper. It's like the educational system is not having this in place. So all of that need to change going forward. So I think we're now in a time with COVID 2020 December, where we're all going into the second lockdown, or most of the countries, at least in Europe, going into the second lockdown. That entrepreneurial thinking will get more and more important going forward, because you can't plan long term anymore. So that means you need to go towards short term. You're not sure, and we have a quite good system, at least in Germany, where you can't get fired like in the US from one day to the other day, or at least one week to the other week.
Exactly.
But if that would be the possibility or a case in Germany or in a couple of countries in Europe, the situation would be even worse because people are not protected. So that's why I think if you want to be long-term secure, but short-term unsecure, entrepreneurship is the best possibility. And these ways of thinking, you just learn triple the amount when you're an entrepreneur compared to being in a large corporation or in a corporation in general, because you're forced to iterate, you're forced to step, you do left, right step every day. And I think that's bringing this way of thinking, this experience in a real setting. So it's like not theory, because I think theory is enough out there in universities and so on, which has its place. But it's more, how do you learn that in a real setting? That's why I've started the young entrepreneurs group, which is now starting the reverse mentorship business, because that's kind of education for all of them. And there are students in that group who want to build their own business.
Wow, man.
There will be 10 steps ahead compared to me in that age, like 24.
Yeah,
I was working on construction sites.
It's super inspiring to hear that, right? Because that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
And how people involved. Because it's funny you mentioned this, like you were talking about entrepreneurship and during this time of a pandemic. Like, I mean, we joked a couple of weeks ago, like, hey, so how's it going? Oh, just trying to survive a pandemic, you know? Who would have thought? And like sitting and having time to reflect, one of the things I kind of realized, because one of the things that I was scared about, and deep down, you know, it's just me and you talking here, right? So it's like the security, like you're letting go of this big brand, now you're stepping out in the world, you're on your own, like, ooh, I'm scared of not having that certainty of a salary every month. And I think one of the great equalizers in this pandemic is that I sat and I thought, you know, of course, inevitably at some stage you have a conversation with my business partner, which is my wife, and you say, you know what, like, imagine if I was still employed, you know, and I couldn't say with a clear mind, like, it would make any difference, because I think for everybody at the moment, there's like massive uncertainty. Yeah. Right. So in a way, I can't say that looking at the pandemic and looking at the fact that I'm an entrepreneur or working on my own, that has made a difference. In fact, it's kind of amplified the fact, like you mentioned, like, okay, cool, how can I think more entrepreneurial? What can I do now? I have certain limitations, constraints, and you know, like constraints make you more creative, right? So how do I work around that? What can I find? How do I find ways to work around it? And I think being in the entrepreneurial space kind of helped with that. But I think the pandemic is kind of like cemented that fact, is that we all have to start thinking like that. If you have a permanent job or you're on your own, you have to have that attitude, because you can't rely on having someone sending you a salary every month. Absolutely. You have to work, you have to put in the elbow grease to build something. And lots of times, this is a challenge for me, is like building something that will work while you're sleeping. Yeah. Now that's a challenge, right?
And it is, but it's easier than you think. It's more, if you go back to systems thinking, if you know how the systems work, you can just plug things in. It's like Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, the book. I guess you have read it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's explaining, and that, I don't know how old this book is.
It's
12,
ages.
13 years old?
Yeah, it's stood the test of time, I guess.
Yeah, and I read it then, and it's as valid as today as it was there. And I still use a lot of things out of that book, since I've read it, I think now 4 times in total, but always in different stages of my life, where I was in different places in the world, in different positions. And it always applies, and you see it from a different perspective, and it helps you always. That's the cool, fun part. And it's a lot about automation, how you don't work yourself to death, and this thinking of the new rich, which is not about money. That's what I love very much.
And that's the thing that we haven't really spoken about, right? Because that was an important thing that we spoke about when we met a couple of weeks ago. And it's something that I even mentioned here. And it's also about quality of life, because one of the big things that motivated me to jump into this world, and sometimes I go like, did I really win it back? but I think I did, is that at some stage I started realizing that I was missing key moments of my kid's life.
Yeah.
Either being preoccupied with business or not excited or not there, physically there, because I'm in some other country or consulting somewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel, like it's actually surprising he hasn't rocked up in here yet, like popping in, saying hello and forcing me to work harder because I need to get money so that he can get presents. And that in itself for me has been a massive reward. If I lost all the money I made this year, whatever, and I think back of all the little moments that I got to experience with him that I wouldn't have in the past, that is a massive thing. And I think you also, I want you to riff a bit about as well, but you also said to me something about that kind of also started playing into your mind. It's like quality of life.
Yeah,
family.
That's super important. And of course, it's always ups and downs when it comes to work perspective. Like right now, I'm in a phase where I'm literally pushing because I'm launching this new challenge, which towards 2021. So I'm working a little bit more than usual. But the whole system, since I'm on myself, is basically I have way more time with the little one. I can go out running, biking, because I'm still doing a lot of sports, even if you don't see that. So I can do that during normal day hours. So, for example, a couple of years back when I was living in Moscow, I was running minus 15 degrees in the morning. At 5 o'clock because I needed to be in the office at 7:30 or something.
Yeah.
Today I can go out of the bedroom, take a coffee downstairs, go into my office, work for an hour. Then at 7:30, the little one wakes up. I spend time with her, and then I can go out running afterwards.
So that's me smiling. Like this is the thing. This is the benefit, right?
It's so much worth it. Or like today, it's Friday today. I'm just stopped working at 12 because we have a local farmers market here, and our tradition is we're going to the local farmers market even in times of COVID because it's outside. It works. Yeah. So I'm always going with the little one to the farmers market every Friday, and that's like our game. And that means Friday from 12 o'clock, switch off.
Yeah,
it's not possible in a corporation. At least it wasn't for me in the jobs I did.
Yeah, no, I had the same experience, and it's not about this being evil. Like, I mean, I think like we said about the education system, a lot of the corporations still work in that kind of, old factory kind of vibe, where it's like, like they say you can be flexible, but it's not really, right? You know, it's difficult to be away from your team if they're busy or something comes up, and there's always something will come up, right? And you can manage it to an extent, but I think that little bit of flexibility, and it comes back to what you said before, is that there is value, and you need to work it into your value plan. Is that the value is not always monetary; it's also about family. I have to talk to myself sometimes too, because I can get so involved and excited about something I'm working on now that I need to say, okay, cool, stop now, because one of the reasons you're sitting here is that it's time to go watch Paw Patrol.
This would never happen to me.
Is it?
But switching gears a little bit, I want to discuss a little bit innovation. So what is innovation for you? How do you connect the dots of innovation?
Well, I mean, this is always a tricky one, right? Because there's so many definitions, and I don't read those definitions because it scares me. But
that's good.
What is it? I mean, what it's not. I can tell you what it's not. It's not incremental improvements, right? So when iPhone comes out with a new improvement on the camera, that's an incremental improvement. For me, it's when I think about innovation is when you change the meaning of something. And when you hear these words, yes, I'm stealing it from Roberto Verganti, Design-Driven Innovation.
I thought you were not reading about it.
No, I didn't read that book specifically for innovation. I was really interested in what drives me is this kind of idea of design, what it means, creativity, because for a long time I had this idea that creativity is like a spark, a moment, poof, and then you have this if you so inclined, use something and then whoop, you get a great idea.
Yeah.
And I had to do a lot of research and started realizing through that. And it's also why I read that book, is that design is a process, right? And it might not be an official process, but everybody has a design process. And sometimes you have to disconnect your brain a little bit. But that's not the question you asked me. It's like, I feel like it's when you look at something and you change the meaning of it, or and you go, you did that, do that, I didn't realize. And if I'm going to explain to you why, as an example, because it's a bit airy-fairy, and I like to talk more about examples, right? I'm not a good definition guy. But if I think of an example of innovation for me, right, it's kind of built into our culture in South Africa. There's this term in South Africa, 'n boer maak 'n plan. And that means a farmer will always make a plan. Right, and it kind of stems from the fact, and it's also true for the broader African continent, is that sometimes you don't have the means to do the sexy stuff. So when I came to Europe, people go we'll plug artificial intelligence in there, and we have this 3D printed. That's not always true when you're in Africa, right? And one of the guys that I worked with that I thought was fundamentally very entrepreneurial was actually a banking guy. Go figure. And one of the things he did, and what he's famous for, is that he, for a long time, if you wanted to do online banking or mobile banking, you had to have a smartphone to do that. So what he did is he figured out a way using USSD. I don't know if you still remember that technology. It's kind of like text messaging, but it's you can still get USSD on an iPhone even, right? But it's kind of a push technology. So the actual communication gets initiated from the person you want to talk to. It sounds weird, right? So the bank will push communication to the phone. It pops up on your screen, looks like a text message, and you answer questions. So he used this USSD technology to actually make online banking or mobile banking available on feature phones. Because back then in South Africa, I'm talking about probably 10 years ago, the mass market didn't have smartphones like we have today. Yeah. They were running around with we used to call it the AK-47 of cell phones, like this old the Samsung flip phones. Yeah. Those things never died, man. And people, they were handed down generations, and those things just worked, right? And he got banking working on those phones. And the thing is, you must remember, it fundamentally changes people's lives, because, these guys had to go and stand in long-ass queues, and they didn't have a relationship with their bank at all. You might lift your eyebrow and say, I don't want to have a relationship with my bank. But they didn't have access to that kind of stuff, right? And I thought, for me, that's always been an example of what innovation is. It's I have these existing things. And it's not about a dream. It's about how can I make something, connect different dots, and then create something new for people. Because it was only a phone that sent text messages and now it's become a connection to my financial, to my bank. I can go check my account. Yes, my money is not stolen by the bank. It's still there, And I always thought, for me, that was always the example that I tried to cling to. And, how can you connect the dots and make something, maybe take something existing, or maybe something new, and then change what it means to people. Yeah. Wow, that was long. How do you see it, by the way?
In interest of time, I would like to switch now towards your podcast. So you mentioned that you have a podcast. What is the podcast about? Why should someone listen?
Oh, maybe you shouldn't. That's the other thing. So I actually have two podcasts, right? The one is on hiatus, because part of the work that I do is also in the world of product management and user experience design. We kind of put it on ice when the whole COVID thing happened. I have a co-host, a good friend I actually met here. He's from the Caribbean islands, and he lives in Poland. The poor guy, he freezes his ass off.
Oh
in the
yeah,
area.
shit.
So he's Jonathan Gull. We host this podcast called Block Thinking, and we kind of explore also entrepreneurship, product management, that kind of stuff. I'm interested in that. He's more of a product manager. He just recently started doing some work in Senegal, for example, helping a e-commerce platform startup there. So that is super interesting stuff to talk about. And we're hoping to get another episode out soon. But the one that's kind of close to my heart at the moment is a podcast called Finding Frequency. And I really just started this based on the inspiration kind of from Seth Godin. I challenged myself. I tried to challenge myself with different things every year, a personal challenge. So a week before the new 2020 started, didn't realize it's going to be 2020.
Not
I
this
decided,
2020.
Yeah, not this one. I had a whole different 2020 in mind, guys. Like, please put me in charge of years. I'll do a better job. So I decided that, I've even being an entrepreneur, I started missing seeing the beautiful things, the extraordinary things in life. Sometimes you because I can be a bit grumpy sometimes. My wife will attest to that, right? So I said to myself, okay, cool, what can I do to sit and look at a normal day and say, what is extraordinary about this day? What is meaning for me? And so I started this podcast called Finding Frequency. The big challenge was that I was going to do one of them a day. So I'm now sitting on episode 345 of me rambling on every day for 5 to 10 minutes. And I publish this podcast every day. Now, heading towards the end of the year, that was my initial goal. I might go further. But that is the thing that I'm doing. And really, the reason I'm doing that is to share with other people, yes. And maybe as a bit of a time capsule for my son, because sometimes I record him and I try and get the voices of some of my friends sometimes. But it's just me talking. The joke is initially I wanted to, and I did some of it at the beginning, record my experience in Poland. I'm a South African in Poland, and I think Polish people are relatively crazy. Sorry, Polish people. And I wanted to capture some of those experiences, and then a pandemic happened. So it's basically me sitting in my little office rambling on.
So it's like you talking mainly.
Mostly,
not
yeah.
interviews or...
Yeah, that's not. Yeah. It's just me reflecting on things and trying to be kind of interesting as much as I can be, and not preaching. I don't want to preach to anybody. I think we all have like value we can add for each other. I'm just sharing what's happening from the perspective of a South African sitting in a little apartment in Warsaw, surviving pandemic, living with a little 4-year-old, and trying to do his own business.
That I love that concept, because I do something similar, which is pushing me, and this whole 1 million thing is like my North Star of 2021, however that will work. But it's also this publishing helps you to think differently, and getting into routine. It's like going out running every day or every second day. It's like you get into a rhythm that's... I'm a huge fan of Seth Godin and his way of like writer's block, and writer's block is not existing stuff.
Yeah,
it's super cool. Yeah,
it's like what he always says, like, you have writer's block, so show me what you've written. Like, if you have true writer's block, you've written a whole bunch of rubbish. Yeah. And I think that whole idea of building cadence, I mean, you're doing it right now. Yeah. Like, you just told me, like, you're going to be launching this thing you're building. You're going to have 12 in the bag, and then you're going to push forward, right? And I wish you all the luck and success with it. But the thing is, you're already doing the work. There's going to be good ones. Maybe the one with South African is going to be like not of the good ones, but you're going to have this. And I think there is something, and I'm trying to work on my wife, for example. She would say that her cadence is like looking after me and then the 4-year-old in that order. But like having something in your personal life, or maybe it's professional, I would say you have to hook to something that's personal, where you have like a routine where you do it. Even if it's bad, just get it out there.
Eat chocolate.
I've worked on that one last year.
Yeah, no, it doesn't
work. It was less successful.
Same here. No, it's awesome. I think we could take on, and we definitely need to do another episode latest in half a year, like we decided.
Yeah, see what happens. Yeah,
when you're famous.
Now, I want to talk to you. Like, I need to flip it around, because I think that you're on the cusp of some really interesting things. I mean, interesting things already happened, and I think the learning I'm taking from you is like really like trying to lift your, like as someone starting a business, lift yourself out of the title of president, user experience designer. Forget about that nonsense. Start trying to position yourself as like an entrepreneur. And that's one of the, I mean, you might think, oh man, but it's one of the things that I take away from my conversations with you. And I think it's super important. Like, it's a mindset. It's not.
Yeah, it is.
You know, and I would add to that is that something you have to work on all the time. And it's like we spoke about this cadence thing. Yeah. It's like, you know what? You're going to screw up. I mean, trust me, I blew up my Mac.
I can tell you.
I can tell you. Yeah. So it's an ongoing thing. I think, and I think what you're creating here is super valuable. So hopefully there's some sense coming out, and we can build a bigger community around this.
Yeah, that's really my goal, and trying to find a way how we help others to accelerate themselves. My English is not working anymore.
Doesn't have a new microphone. You have like a button to fix that.
Like, okay, can you switch to English, please? Go back. No, I really appreciate taking the time. Just one last bigger question. What do you think? One thing is you will be in my podcast again, but where will you be in a year from now? So it's December 2020 today for the listeners and people who watch. So where will you be in a year? And what has happened? It's an easy one.
Yeah, that's super easy, right? Talk to me again in January. I'm trying to cop out. But I think the one thing that I want to achieve, and this is why I want to reflect that the conversation we just had is authentic. And it's a challenge that I set down for myself. And I can't talk to you because I want it to be not small, but the thing is the idea of being a true entrepreneur is what I want to be able to say at the end of the year. So working through the process of getting rid of what is the systematic stuff, getting people in to take care of that, start really saying and owning that entrepreneurial spirit, and then having a business that I can look at. And I like the idea what you're saying about like having that helicopter view, to have a business that I can look at, say, okay, this is something that I've created. It's running. I'm able to pull the levers rather than, I mean, there's this thing about your question you have to ask yourself: are you working in your business or are you working on your business? Yeah. And I want to be working on it, not in it, because at the moment I'm kind of blurring the lines, and that is the thing that I'm working on. It's great. I'm super kind of, I'm privileged. Don't get me wrong. I'm super privileged, but you have to put the challenge on. And my challenge for me with my business is like, how can I shift from inside to more the outside and controlling the on aspect of my business? And that's where I want to be. It sounds boring, but
no, I love that. That's super cool, and I think that's already a reason for people to follow you. So where can people find out about you? How can people follow you? Reach out to you?
So don't do it. Like, I'm on Twitter and all these other things, but I'm super useless. If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is my kind of platform where I operate and I publish content and where I connect with people and have conversations. So you can just type my name with my crazy surname into LinkedIn and you'll find me there, and I'm happy to connect and catch up.
So you need to pronounce your surname and your name again for...
So here goes the German surname with Afrikaans accent. Werner Puchert.
Was that South African accent or Polish accent? Or a mix?
It's a bit of a mix now, right? So, don't let my mother-in-law listen to this podcast because she keeps on asking, when are you speaking Polish, Werner?
Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not an easy one.
It's difficult. Talk to Aga about that one. Jens, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for being in the show. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hope and I don't hope, we will do another episode someday.
And I'll be watching you, and good luck with all your endeavors. You have a huge fan club out there rooting for every step you make, and I think it's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but it's a meaningful one. So rock and roll, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Werner. Talk to you.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical.